Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're going to be talking about on-the-fly NPCs. I've already talked about the political web, I've talked about building factions, I've talked about putting that into play, but there's something I haven't talked about, and that's how many NPCs to build and how many to improvise on the spot in the game when the players ask you. So it all comes back to our foundation again, the faction. Which faction is this NPC a part of? If you understand the faction, it's very easy to create NPCs on the fly. You should still make your major NPCs the leader of the faction and his number two. Definitely make them ahead of time. Maybe make 8 others if you want to. Maybe make no others if you want to. But get the top 2 because they're the most important. You need them in order to make the other factions so you know the relationships between factions, because that'll be determined largely by the guys at the very top, the top 2 guys. Everybody below that, they can just fit as a generic representation of their faction. So once you have the faction, everything else is easy. For example, if you've got your castle, the player characters come in, they're like, hey, let's go to the castle. They walk into the castle. You have prepped the Baron and his number 2 guy. Okay, let's say this is a very political faction, a very mercantile faction. Politics and money are important. So the number 2 guy is the steward or the seneschal, the accountant basically. He's the number 2 guy behind the Baron. And you know how the Baron is going to act. He's the one who set all these policies in motion, and he's picked the best guy to help him, the seneschal. So you know that. Great. Now and you'll know the history of the castle and the region and the politics between, the castle and the church and the castle and maybe the peasants or the next baron over, whatever is important in your setting. So when the players come in and they say, oh, I want to go talk though to the castellan, and you haven't prepped the castellan, the man in charge of defense of the castle, but you know the faction and you know the leader who picked this guy, right? So it's like, well, on the fly, just at the table, take 2 seconds and think. The Baron is really greedy. He's a politicker, and he's very, he cares about skill and craft, mercantilism. So maybe he would pick as the castellan a mercenary, because he trusts the Baron trusts money, and the Baron trusts professional skill. So of course he'd hire a mercenary. That makes sense. So just do it on the fly. Take 2 seconds. Say, okay, you come to the castellan, and he's an old, grizzled, retired mercenary. And you might not know that, right? You might describe what he looks like and get talking to him, and then go into your mercenary, the old, grizzled mercenary persona, and then they'll pick up on, oh, this guy's old and grizzled. He's talking about battles from 50 years ago and the expense of the troops and how his budget is being cut, and the Baron doesn't understand that you need to provide funds to not get killed. And if the Baron doesn't provide those funds, then the castellan might just quit and go work for somebody else. Maybe that's this kind of beleaguered mercenary captain castellan character. And you make him up on the fly because you know his faction, you know his boss who picked him for the job. So it's pretty easy to make this guy up. And then the players can say, okay, well, let's go talk to the priest of this castle, the guy who's in charge of the rectory or whatever, the chapel, the chaplain. And they go in, and again, you haven't prepped this character, but you think to yourself, okay, well, I know it's a merchant house, and I know they're really greedy and a little bit politicking. Right? So typically, you can think to yourself, priests cost money. They're always asking for tithes. So the Baron probably will want the kind of priest who doesn't really ask for that kind of tithe, but somebody who's still very politically important. So maybe you say, okay, the priest is the third son of the baron in the next barony over, so that you get the political connection. And when you walk up and you're talking to him and you like squint at him and he's like, and you're like, is he drunk? It's like, I don't think this man's a very good priest, but he's got a political connection. And because he's a really terrible priest, he won't be asking for tithes. So you get this drunken, wastrel, noble priest character who's, he's really terrible priest, but he's got the political connections. And the baron wants a terrible priest anyway. So you've got this priest, and he's, if you ask him about philosophy and cosmology and religion, it's like he's kind of iffy. Like he knows the basics just enough to be a priest, barely. But beyond that, it's like he doesn't even care. So if you're trying to like, oh, Father, what should I do? I've come across this orc caravan, and they were transporting slaves, and I slew them all. And then I sold the slaves. I couldn't help myself. Father, absolve me of my sin. Was this wrong? And then the drunken priest is like, he's like, oh man, that's messed up. Oh, Sigmar be praised. Sigmar believes that slavery is wrong, my child, but also orcs, not so nice. Sigmar will surely absolve you. Oh, sure. And it's like, he might brush on the religion as a veneer, but really it's like, he doesn't care at all. Like, he cares about getting drunk and maybe, banging out some courtesans and maybe doing a little bit of politicking and being a kiss ass to the baron. That's what he cares about. Religion and moral decision, and he doesn't want to deal with it. And he's not going to. And if he does, he's not going to do it well. Right? So, and as you're playing, you make your notes and you write down everything that's come into play. So when they come back, the same characters are there. And maybe when the players leave, and you say, okay, well, now I've got 4 NPCs for this faction, and let's ripple effect them. So the priest in the castle, how does he get along with the priest in the city? How does he get along with his father, the baron in the next kingdom? How does he get along with the castellan? The castellan, same kind of questions. How does he get along with the mercenaries over here, with the town guard, with the baron himself, with the chaplain? And you get your political web, even deeper and richer. But you haven't had to pre-prep it. You've just known, you've had a foundation to build on. When the question comes up, you build on it. Once it's built, between sessions, you say, okay, how can I expand this foundation and build it even higher? And you put 10 sessions in like that, you got a really deep sandbox to run around in. So that's basically my video on the fly NPCs. I love on the fly NPCs. I do it all the time, constantly. You just have to think about the context that they are in. If you know the context and the foundation, their faction, their boss who picked them, their country, their religion, all these things about the world, if you know the world, you can make characters like really, really quick. So I'd encourage you to do that. It's a lazy GM tool, but it's effective. You lay the foundation first, and then on the fly, everything else is so much easier. I'll also give a shout out to Andrew Van Roy. He asked me this question. We were discussing it. He is going to be running Game of Thrones shortly. I wish him the best of luck. Check out his channel. I believe it's just called Andrew Van Roy. Because he's got some good videos. He's a frequent contributor here. You've seen him on live plays here. A very strong player. I'm sure I'll make a strong GM as well. So until I see you all again, good day and good gaming.